clap. All right, I shall share my screen. Okay. All right. Hi, everyone, on this Wednesday afternoon. Welcome to the last academic Senate meeting of fall 2020 and of 2020 in general. So I'm officially calling our meeting to order at this time, 3:04 p.m. Item 2.2 is always an informational item for us. I'll revisit this idea when we get to our discussion section. But these are our academic Senate community values that we created together through our summer retreat meetings, and we voted upon this fall. Item 2.2 for any guests that we have are Zoom meeting guidelines. Essentially, you need to raise your hand and I will call on you in the order that you raise your hand to add to the discussion. Just so that the public is aware, other than the public comment time period, we do not have non-senators contributing to our discussion. So if you raise your hand and you're not called on, that is why. And now we are at item 2.4, our land acknowledgement. Before we read our land acknowledgement, or before I ask for a volunteer to read this, I do want to point out that at our last academic Senate meeting, we had Senator Ana Garcia provide public comment about how land acknowledgements could potentially be problematic if they aren't attached to action or processes that are being looked at or worked on by the group. With that in mind, I actually reached out to the Chumash band, and I will include that in my president's report, and I will mention what has happened there. However, because it is not established yet, and because they developed our land acknowledgement for us for this purpose, we will read it until they have come to a conclusion about how they feel about us reading it. So with that in mind, can I ask for a volunteer to read our land acknowledgement today? Thank you. Cornelia?
Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, the land that Santa Barbara City College sits upon, their home. We are honored to be guests upon this land and are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding.
Thank you, Cornelia. We will now move on to item 2.5, 2.6, approval of the agenda. Unless there are other mentions or requests for changes, we will accept the approval of the agenda as posted. I do want to highlight that we will have two timed items. One will be discussion item 8.2, the BP and AP related to credit for prior learning. Dean Paloma Arnold will be joining us at that time for a discussion to help me with that item. And then the other one is item 9.1, a presentation from Lindsay Moss and James Zavas for the updated fiscal projections for the next 5 years. So that will be at 4:15. Which brings us to item 3.1, public comment. As I mentioned, sorry, I'm glitchy. My brain's not working. So public comments. As I mentioned before, non-senators cannot contribute to the discussion except for at times of public comment. So I'm calling for public comment now. If somebody wants to give a public comment prior to a later agenda item, you can also do that. So at this time, I know that Eileen is here to provide public comment for the Senate. Is there anyone else present today from the public that would like to provide public comment? If so, please let myself know or Christina know. You can also raise your virtual hand. But at this point, I will turn things over to Eileen. Eileen, please feel free to unmute yourself and provide the Senate with your public comment.
Thanks, Rhiann. Hi, I'm Eileen. I'm from the English department. Two things. First, I want to thank everybody for their incredible work of making this campus run virtually this semester, and actually since March. It's tremendous and unprecedented thing, and I'm very grateful. I would also specifically like to acknowledge our adjunct faculty who outnumber us full-timers 2 to 1 about. They have worked in isolation this semester. There's no running into each other on the bridge or the hallways. If you taught asynchronously, you lack that student contact that we all love. But even if you complain about another Zoom meeting, full-timers at least have this opportunity for camaraderie, albeit virtually. The isolation of conducting all work online affects us psychologically. It takes a toll. Many adjuncts trained over the summer to teach online, not even knowing if they would be guaranteed classes this fall. This pandemic has touched everyone psychologically and financially, and our school is no exception. We are seeing now a significant drop in enrollment, and adjuncts will be the one to take that financial hit. I know some have already been informed that their classes are closed, and while we all hope that enrollments are going to go up and cancellations won't be necessary, if they don't, again, the adjuncts are the ones who are going to suffer first. And this has created a lot of anxiety and a lack of focus for them, and has really hit their morale pretty hard. We all know that higher education is rife with inequities regarding adjuncts, and I know those aren't going to be fixed here today or anytime soon. We can't guarantee classes, but we can offer our respect and support and gratitude. I think during this pandemic, we have to hold each other up. We're all connected, and we have to acknowledge the hard work and the psychological toll. Now, it might seem kind of odd that I'm here to thank our hardworking and dedicated adjuncts to a group that's almost exclusively full-time here today, but this is a group with some reach and influence, and I would ask that the Senate be especially cognizant of the emotional needs of their adjuncts, particularly as we don't yet know how far-reaching the effects of this pandemic will be. And I would encourage the senators who represent the various divisions here to work with their department and to acknowledge the efforts of their adjunct colleagues. They've been out there supporting the needs of our students without the same level of institutional support that full-timers get. Thank you, and I wish you all a safe and restful and very healthy break.
Thank you so much, Eileen. Is there anyone else present that would like to provide public comment at this time? Please raise your hand, virtual hand in the participants field if so. Okay. We are now at item 4.1, minutes of our regular meeting from November 18th. Does anybody have any edits or comments about these meeting minutes? Suggestions?
Hi, Ray, this is Christina. I actually do have something I wanted to share. I had made a note to modify the minutes, and I didn't do that until this morning. And this was just to add clarifying language from the conversation that took place where Anna Garcia, Robbie Fisher, Robbie amended, I believe 3 or 4 times, maybe 5. And I just added all of that text to the Google Doc. So that may not be reflected in the PDF you attached, but if I could show it to the Senate right now, and I can pinpoint exactly what the changes are so that if everyone's okay, we can amend those and
Okay.
approve them.
Sure.
I'll share my screen for a second then. Okay, so the text in green is what I updated, and you can see it there. And if anyone has any questions, I'm here.
Could you zoom in, Christina?
Of course.
Thank you.
So is
we-
everyone okay with the amendment, with the editing of the minutes?
Seems like it.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay. So now, let me get my screen back. We have considered amendments. If anyone else has, unless anyone else has further clarifications, edits, or comments to make about the minutes, we will accept them as amended and posted. Yeah? Okay. Whew. Which brings me to my president's report. Just in time for Olive to get angry. Okay. I attached 2 items to my president's report. Previously in the semester, my president's report was only the BRAC minutes and reports from our faculty liaisons to, or excuse me, not liaisons, faculty representatives on BRAC. So one of the documents today is the minutes from the BRAC meeting. So I really appreciate Patricia Frank for bringing those to the Senate for our consideration. So those are there posted as part of my president's report. I do want to go through and give an oral report on a few items of interest for you all. One thing I want to mention is that as we move into the spring, there are probably going to be changes to your faculty member and your division's campus service. So over break or at the beginning of the next semester, please make sure that you are checking into that shared Google Doc with all of the different assignments and making sure that your division is represented, especially on any of the committees that require divisional representation. As I mentioned, I would address the land acknowledgement, the issue that Ana Garcia shared with us last time. I have been emailing with the Coastal Band of the Chumash. I have touched base more than once with the tribal chair. She is in dialogue with the nation to figure out what they want to do. And so I am just waiting back to hear what they want to do. At this time, they have been contacted by others that also want land acknowledgement. So she mentioned to me that this is a hot topic and they want to have a conversation before they get back to us. So with that in mind, it's my decision to continue to keep the land acknowledgement on our agenda until they give us an idea about whether they appreciate our inclusion of it or would prefer us to stop saying it. But I want that decision to come from them because they created the land acknowledgement for that purpose. Let's see. Katie Laris, chair of PNR, emailed to let me know that Dr. Goswami participated in their November 24th meeting. They found that incredibly helpful. At that meeting, they impressed upon him that there was a history of the president, superintendent in EVBs regularly meeting with our different divisions at division meetings. So they let him know that, and he is going to have Jasmine reach out to the different divisions to get invites to division meetings. So please know that that's coming, and please know that that was a faculty-driven conversation and request. You should know that as the NTCC chair, I have emailed almost all of the faculty that receive a so-called leadership stipend. This does not include chair stipends. This does not include coaching stipends. This is specifically around course coordinator, program coordinator, and similar work. You might hear faculty questioning about that, and I just wanted to give you all the questions that I sent to them. So please know that that is happening. The other thing I wanted to share with you all that BPAP 3052 employee student relations continues to be discussed at the BPAP level. Just so that you know, there was several public comments at the last BPAP meeting. One from faculty member Robin Goodnow, who shared her history of being a SBCC student here on our campus and how she was subjected to romantic and physical advances by her instructor. Another public comment at that meeting was given by student program advisor Chelsea Lancaster, who also shared her own personal story of the advances she received as a student here at SBCC and then later as a student employee. And then also she spoke on behalf of the single moms that she interacts with about the advances that the students have received. And so I just wanted to share that out, that was a particularly emotionally charged meeting, and that this policy in particular continues to be something that people are thinking about and contributing to and participating in the discussion around. That concludes my president's report. We'll now move on to item 5.2, our Senate liaison report. Senate liaisons, go ahead. Let us know if there is any oral reports that you would like to give at this time.
Just want to, I'm going to point out that this isn't necessarily the FPSS that's leading this. This is Dean Imhoff and Vandana Gavaskar and Amy Thompson, working with the LTAs and the math lab, are beginning to pilot collecting apportionment for tutoring. So the pilot for that is going to happen in the spring, and mostly the hope is that via that pilot, we work out any kinks that may come up. But just as a heads up to Senate, that when we work to collect apportionment and roll it out campus-wide, there will probably be some changes we have to make to the way that we do tutoring in order to meet the apportionment guidelines. So I don't know fully what those will be, but just a heads up that may happen. It won't affect all of campus until we want to roll it out campus-wide next fall. But just keep an eye on those conversations.
Cool. Thank you, Pam. Robbie?
Just the written report will suffice.
Okay, thanks. Michelle? Robin? We're all good? Yeah. Pam,
Actually, I wanted to point out one more thing. Any of you that have used tutors this semester in this, or summer or whatever in the crazy online environment, if you have come up with some great, awesome way of getting students to come to tutoring, or to, or you and your tutor figured out a way to tutor really well, or any of those kinds of things, then you are not on FPSS. If you could pass that along to Dr. Gavaskar or me or both of us, that would be awesome, because I'm hoping we'll be able to get some ideas out to faculty before spring start. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, and Ruth is having trouble with her mic and on her iPad, and she does not have an oral report to provide, but she did want to say that you all should be reading the liaison report. She always reminds us of that, and I appreciate that. Thanks, Ruth. Okay, Dr. Ralston.
Yes, ma'am. I do not have an extensive report. I just want to touch base on the challenging space that is life in the purple tier. So as you all know, our county has been included in the Southern California region. There are politics and conversations happening about what that might mean going forward. But for our purposes, it helps us recognize an elevated threat to our students and our staff. And so as a consequence, Dr. Goswami has determined that we should be starting spring semester for the first 2 weeks entirely online, even those courses we plan to have in person, with the exception of those essential workforce programs. We have 9 of those that will be navigating in-person instruction in different ways for the first 2 weeks of spring. Everything else will stay online as we had planned. What's hard about this is we were actually working through getting ready to go to orange tier, which would have given us more opportunity to do things in person. At the time, we just spiked locally. And so everything that you can do to help encourage students and members of the community stay safe. If the stay-at-home order that we're in now works as it should, we should be coming back to a slightly better spring. And then I'm sure you're paying a lot of attention to vaccination possibilities. And we've been trying to predict what the future will hold for us. And when you hear from Lindsay Moss and James Zavas at the end of our meeting today, you'll see how difficult it is to anticipate our enrollment and the budget constraints as a result. But we've been trying to do our best thinking about what to expect. So you've been paying attention or hearing about a downturn in enrollment. Last week, we were down by about 25%. This week, it looks like we're a -18, so that's an improvement. And we think we will be getting much better than that, but we will probably not be where we were in spring 2020. Ray worked with me and Luce and Paloma to develop a way to reach out to students directly. So for faculty doing that work, thank you very much. And the managers are doing a phone campaign that will start today and tomorrow to reach out to students who have not yet enrolled. And we'll be doing everything we can. I want to separate that from the economics of the conversation. You're going to hear about that at the end of the meeting today. My greatest concern is when students drop out, stop out, or fall out of community college, their likelihood of returning drops to 25%. And what we don't want is to lose students along their educational path during this crisis for them to never return. So if you can encourage students to enroll in fewer units than they might have, if that's the difference between 0 and 5, let's have them get there at 5 units so that they can stay connected with us. So everything that you all are doing with that is really crucial and important, and I'm very grateful for it. So thank you. Thanks, Ray.
Thank you for that. Item 5.4, requests to agendize items at future meetings. There, no such requests came in. Our consent item agenda. So just as a reminder piece, just as ongoing, how do we do things at the Senate level? Whenever we have items on the consent agenda, we approve the consent agenda as its whole. So if there's one thing that needs to be discussed, it needs to be pulled from the consent agenda and put it at the end of the agenda. So the 2 items on the consent agenda, I'll inform you all about together, item 6.2 and 6.3. 6.2 are the it's an academic senate subcommittee, the sabbatical leave committee. They have recommended 2 sabbatical leaves for next year. One from our full-time faculty member in School of Extended Learning that does the parent-child workshops. Oh, I can't right now, I'm sorry. Yolanda Medina Garcia, as well as Bill Dinklage. And item 6.3 is the sabbatical leave report that's coming back from Stephanie Dotson, who took a sabbatical last fall. So with that, do I hear, do we need to pull these items to put them at the on our agenda for discussion, or can we approve it? And if so, can I hear a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Ellen. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we'll do roll call voting. Cornelia?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Jenny Baxton?
Yes.
Patricia?
So sorry. Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Devana? Devana? Is she here? I thought I saw her. We'll come back to Devana. Pam?
Yes.
Kathy O'Connor?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Ruth? Oh, her mic still might not be working. Tara? Yes. Russell,
Yes.
Trisha,
Yes.
and Anna.
Yes.
Okay. Dee Dee?
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. All right. So we got everyone except for Ruth. Thank you for that. Okay, now we are on our information agenda. So board policies and administrative procedure, the AP 4105 that we worked on back in November is here for information. So we've seen this before, and we've made a commitment to continue working on this AP in the spring. There are further things that need to be updated, but for right now, it's here as an information item. Patricia?
Yes, I just wanted to encourage all of you guys to share this information out with your division. I shared it with my division last Friday, and there was a lot of interest because, as you know, we have people who aren't using Canvas. And so I think to the extent we're going to actually try to do this, we need to let everybody know as soon as possible so they can get started on that over winter break. So yeah, just a notice, Ray, our agendas are public and all of that, but this is a big change, a big and important change. So let's get the word out, okay?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't think of that. Thanks for mentioning that, Patricia. Yeah, it should be definitely shared out in that way. Okay. There will be a spring survey coming out for students from IR. If needed, we can invite IR to one of our spring meetings to discuss that one more. Z shared this via email, but I thought it was important, so I wanted to put it on our Senate agenda as well. The trans inclusive classroom resources that were made by himself and a student, Ray. So that is there for you all. It has clickable links in it, and one of the links in it is the recording of the seminar that they put on together. Okay, Pamela mentioned this. I emailed about this. It's the faculty outreach to your students to sign up for the spring courses. The campaign images are included in here. So if you could incorporate them in some way in the last couple of days that you have left with your students, whether it's putting it on the Canvas page or sharing it with them, or just, your own personal email, some personal touch would be greatly appreciated there. A proper announcement will be made by the Office of Communications, but I do have to share the good news with all of you now. The Well did receive first runner-up for the State Academic Senate, the ASCCC Exemplary Program Award. So I see a couple of you reacting, but why don't you guys go ahead and unmute yourselves and say yay, because it's well deserved.
Yay!
Good job. Woo-hoo.
So it's really exciting. There's a cash prize associated with that. So be on the lookout for communication coming from Luz and her office for that one. It's really great. With that in mind, there is a call for the Stand Back Stroud Diversity Award. Darren Gerard already emailed everyone. It's here as well. The timing on this one is tricky, and he emailed now to get it out. Basically, the application is going to be due right when we all get back to campus, and we're all too busy getting our spring classes started. So just keep that in mind, that if there's time over break to work on a nomination, that would be very well appreciated. Okay. Now we are at item 8.1. This is our second reading of this item. Last time it was, I had the vantage point of assuming it was well received by the Senate. There was only one request for a change. Patricia Stark helped me with that change, which was incorporating what the Brown Act is as one of the whereases. So if we are happy with this item, I would like to suggest to the Senate body to move this to action and accept it as our, our way of how we include it, of how we're including more voices at our meetings. So with that, any comments, discussions, motions, etc.?
I move to move this to action for approval.
Thank you, Robbie. Is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
Great. So Robbie has made the motion. Robin Goodnow has seconded it. Is there any discussion on the item at this time? Okay, so with that, we'll move on to roll call voting for this motion. So the motion on the table is to move this resolution to action. Cornelia,
Yes.
Counselor Jen,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Jenny,
Yes.
Patricia,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Ivana,
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Robin,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Robbie,
Yes.
Ruth.
I just joined. I don't know what you're voting on. I had to shut down, so I abstain. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But I'm here now.
Tara,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Trisha,
Yes.
and Anna.
Yes.
Excellent. So this item has now been moved to action. And just to catch Ruth up, we are working on the resolution for allowing more voices at the Senate table.
Yes. Okay. And I missed an okay vote to miss.
So now that item is in action, do we have a motion to approve this resolution?
I motion to approve.
Thanks, Pam. Do we have a second?
I'll second. This is Robbie.
Robbie, thank you. Is there any discussion about the resolution? At this time, I'm hearing none, so we'll do our roll call. Cornelia,
Yes.
Counselor Jen,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Jenny,
Yes.
Patricia,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Ivana,
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Robin,
Yes.
Jenny. Sorry, I just gave you a nickname. Jen,
Yes. Normally I'm okay with nicknames, but not Jenny. Not for me. Thank you.
it's that your last name starts with B and Jenny Baxton, and yeah, no, my apologies.
You're fine.
Robbie,
Yes.
Ruth,
Yes.
Tara,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Trisha,
Yes.
and Anna.
Yes.
Excellent. All right, I will share this out via email to the campus community so that people are aware that what this resolution does is change it so that the president is responsible for asking for comments before the discussion items and different items, that people do not have to declare they want a public comment at the beginning of the meeting. They can declare that later in the meeting. And also that we have a commitment to organize more faculty town halls for more faculty participation in that way outside of the confines of a academic Senate meeting. So I hope this is really helpful for our faculty body to be more informed and participate more in our Senate processes. So I think this is a huge, huge win for us. Okay, the time is now 3:38 p.m. We do have a timed item for 3:45, but before we get, is Paloma here? Paloma, are you here? I'm not seeing her. Dean Arnold, are you here? No. Okay. So I will wait to start that item, and I will at least introduce item 8.3. Senator Ana Garcia and I worked together. She did most of the work to create a credit part-time faculty Senate committee participation survey. The reason why she did this is because it has come up in the past that part-time faculty would like to be represent divisions on committees, and that they aren't able to because Senate bylaws prohibit that. And so instead of, and I think Eileen said this in her public comments, you know, a lot of times at these government participation tables, the people there are full-time faculty, and it seems as though that we are always speaking on behalf of part-timers. And I've heard the opinion that part-timers don't want to serve on these committees because they're not compensated and because they don't have time. And then I've also heard other full-time faculty say that they do want to serve on it. So instead of having full-time faculty anecdotally offer what they know, I asked Ana to initiate the survey and get their part-time faculty credit voice on whether or not they want to participate on our committees. So she put together the results of that survey for us, and I put them in this shared document that you all hopefully have reviewed when you reviewed the agenda. So she received 58 responses. The majority of the responses were from classroom faculty and not educational support faculty. One of the main questions that was asked was, would you consider serving on a committee if there was no additional compensation for this service? And what you'll notice is that the majority of responses are either yes or maybe. And that, would you be interested in representing your division? And again, the majority of the responses were either yes or maybe. Ana also broke down the comments for us in the pros, the negatives, and also, you know, ideas. So with that, with the last couple of minutes, I'd like to open this item up for discussion. One thing that I want to set some ground rules when we do this. Please remember that the majority of the people at this table are full-time faculty. And so we do have part-time faculty at the table, one from credit and one from non-credit. So please, let's make sure that we are listening to what they have to say, as well as the quantitative and qualitative information provided in this report. Try not to revert back to your own bias from your full-time lens, and keep in mind what is being shared here. So does anybody have anything that they would like to contribute to this conversation, this discussion item? Pam.
Just had a question because one of the ideas there mentioned flex, and I was wondering, since it was mentioned there, is it not possible for part-timers to get flex
It
for being
is.
on a committee?
It is.
Okay, so, all right.
Yes. Other questions, comments? My son has contributions. So, okay, let me direct this conversation then. What I said at the beginning was that currently our bylaws exclude part-time participation on our Senate committees. We now have in front of us survey completed by our part-time faculty. Would anybody like to discuss changing the bylaws to include them? Do we want to maintain our status quo? How are you all feeling about that? I see Ana, and then Robin.
Yeah, so I guess I just want to reiterate the point that was made during public comment about the number of part-time faculty that make up the faculty body, and emphasize that me and Trisha are the only representation on campus for that entire body, and thinking about the diversity in terms of the different divisions and areas that are, that our part-time faculty are in. Even these positions are super limited. I think as a counselor and as a instructor on this campus, I do feel like I'm in a unique position for this adjunct position. Usually it's been an instructional faculty member that has represented adjuncts in this role. And I also just want to speak to the fact that this is not even enough. If it was up to me, I would say we should have at least 2 credit senators. I don't know enough about non-credit, but I'm sure that they could probably use a second as well, just to have a little bit more representation if this is going to be the only place that we are given a voice. And then secondly, to say that it's based on the responses that I received, it looks like there is significant enough potential interest to explore the possibilities. And I think also recognizing, especially as we're navigating this budget situation and all of that stuff, that it's understandable, that we're not going to be able to be at every table all the time because our positions are so dependent on, I guess, the status of the college, and we have no job security, and technically I could be here today as Senate and in the spring not have a class, and then what happens, so I guess bringing all of those concerns up.
Thank you so much, Anna. The time is now 3:45. There are 4 hands raised to make sure that that I don't interrupt your train of thought too much. I do want to call on you now, but please recognize that we do have a timed item up next. So just keep that in mind when you are thinking about what to share. So the order is Robin, Cornelia, Ellen, and then Trisha. So Robin, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say that I personally don't have any objection, and I don't think my division would. I would, want to take it back to them to having the bylaws be inclusive of the possibility of adjunct faculty serving as reps. Anna did a good job of talking about some of the complexities around the issue. I did hear in Anna's comments the desire for more strictly adjunct representation, and I think those are 2 separate things. This is talking about including adjunct representation of their divisions on committees, correct? And as we all know, that can be a pretty restrictive role where you're representing the concerns of your division. And so I think there's a second issue that Anna's bringing up of just having adjunct representing adjunct and their concerns. So,
yeah, good point, Robin. Cornelia?
So the business division tried that a couple of years ago. We did ask, or we had a volunteer, a part-time faculty volunteer who was willing to represent the division, I believe in the faculty resource committee. And so she went, and then I think in the second meeting, we were informed that was not allowed. So she was accepted to attend as a guest. We didn't know that the Senate bylaws didn't allow for part-time faculty being the division representative. I found this whole situation very frustrating and also disrespectful to our part-time volunteer. And I am in full support of that we change the bylaws and allow part-time faculty.
Thank you, Cornelia. Ellen?
I'll be really quick because I just want to reinforce what Anna and Robin both already said, that I think changing the bylaws is a start, but I think we also need to look at other ways to make sure that part-time faculty are represented in our governance process.
Thank you. Trisha?
I'd just like to clarify that. So non-credit, we do have representation on about 4 committees, I guess now, and that was thanks to, I know Patricia and you were involved, or Rand, you were involved in, we have someone on PEC and on the SLO committee and on the CAC. And then we've always had someone on FPSS. So that is, like, I think, a step in the right direction. But I really like the idea that what the survey that Anna did, it didn't include non-credit part-time faculty. And I would like to do one of those in the future. But I just wanted to wait until, with our new vice president, Joyce Coleman, just started on the 1st. And so I just want to say that we'll be exploring that in the future and coming back to you with more ideas about non-credit part-time involvement.
Yeah, and that's right, Tricia. So for this one in particular, it was actually born out of the situation that Cornelia mentioned, which is where they had their division rep on a committee. And so that's why this one went straight to credit. So just to give everybody.
Yeah, oh no, I totally, I understand.
Yeah, so it was actually to address some of the stuff Cornelia was sharing. Ruth?
I'm definitely in support of this. I just want to make sure that if and when we do change the bylaws, that we account for the possibility of an adjunct stepping down, like Anna mentioned, and or not continuing for whatever reason, either not getting the class or, that we include that so that there can be continuity in terms of having the ability for someone else to step in a process.
Yeah. And I'll share that, sometimes we don't even have continuity with our full-timers, right? Your teaching schedule changes and you need a new rep for your division on a given committee, right? So yeah, that's definitely a concern, but at the same time, we already deal with that with full-time.
Oh yeah, what I'm just saying is that we might need to be more flexible with it.
Right. Okay, so for right now, I'm going to pause us on this. Thank you, Ruth, for that last comment. We'll revisit this as I'm sure there might be more talking points. And I want us to clarify the direction that I'll take with this. But at this time, I do want us to move to item 8.2. And please just give me 1 second. Okay, sorry, friends. So Dean Paloma Arnold is here, and she is going to present this item along with me. So I'll kick it off, Paloma, and I will introduce it. And then anything that I forget, please help me out. So this item, we have 2 policies in front of us, a board policy and an administrative procedure, number 4235, credit for prior learning. What I would like to share about these 2 policies in front of us is that, all right, I need you to stop. What I'd like to share about these is that these policies are coming forward and have been drastically overhauled because of a directive that was coming from the Chancellor's office and legislation to make giving college credit more equitable for our students. So this is a really good thing that is coming forward for us, and we're going to put college credit, we're going to be giving college credit to a lot more students for different things that they have already accomplished in their lifetime. I'll just give you a short list. This isn't the exhaustive list. The exhaustive list, of course, is in the procedure and policies and the attached documents. Giving students military credit, for example, for their military, giving students college credit for their military service. Perhaps they're a returning student that has certain professional credentials, international baccalaureates. We already gave college credit for advanced placement exams. That is also part of these new procedures and policies. One thing I'd like to point out is that what's different is that now we are giving SBCC credit for these. Palomar College, because this initiative came from the Chancellor's office, did a pilot program where they developed an AP and BP, and we took heavily from what they did. And I want to share with you all that it's my feeling that this AP and BP is not well fleshed out yet, because we were on such a short time scale to get it done by the December 30th, 2020 deadline that the Chancellor's office gave all California community colleges. So what I'd like for you all to keep in mind is that there may be things in the BP and the AP that aren't fleshed out, that might not work for your division or your department. But I am going to tell you now that I have a commitment that I will bring these items back in January, and I will also be sharing them out with department chairs so that we can start that work at the department level as well and say, okay, what are your thoughts? What works? What doesn't work? What do we need to figure out, and work from there? But there is this directive from the Chancellor's office to have a BP and an AP ready to go by that December 30th deadline. Dean Arnold, how'd I do? Anything you want to add?
Sorry, I was having a hard time getting my cursor over to unmute myself. No, you did a great job, Ray. I don't think there's anything really that I feel that we need to add. I think I would really reiterate your two comments that you made that I hope can really be, well, three things. One is that this is really an equity initiative, that this is really recognizing that students bring to college campuses all different types of learning. And this is a way to honor and give students credit for those alternative methods of learning that may not happen kind of in the traditional college campus setting. And this would really help students achieve their goals, degrees, certificates more quickly. And one of the biggest differences, like you mentioned, is that whereas before we would maybe clear prerequisites, or we would maybe give competency area, satisfy competency areas like on a GE or on, complete a waiver for a major requirement. This is actually giving a student SBCC course credit for that class. The other thing I want to reiterate, like you said, is that this came down very quickly, a little bit quietly. And so the process that we had to go through to get this ready to go by December 31st was definitely not the ideal process. It is something that we are required to have ready to go, quote unquote, by December 31st. And we fully recognize that there will need to be a lot more collaboration and work to make sure that this is actually the procedures and policies that we're gonna be implementing and using, but we do need to have something ready to go on January 1st if a student were to approach us and request some credit. Yeah, I think that was it. Really just sort of reiterating that, hoping we can really make this a collaborative process beginning in the spring semester to flesh this out and make this work well for everyone.
Could I throw in 2 points?
Sure.
Real quick. Laura Castro really helped guide our approach to this. And so she will be part of making sure that as we develop programmatic departmental responses to the areas that could be included for program of study, she'll be right there with us, making sure that we don't design anything that would not serve students in their local degree completion or in their efforts to transfer. So this is going to be a very student-centered, faculty-supported, faculty-led initiative to make sure the pieces work for this. And we're responding to a state chancellor who is really progressive. And sometimes the push on the progressive components push us in some faster ways. And so this is not our first time where we've responded to what we all think is actually a really interesting, good idea, particularly an equity focused one that doesn't fit our normal sense of time. And so that's a good thing in so many ways, to have a chancellor that is much more interested in changing the world for students. It requires of us a bunch of nimbleness and flexibility that we're navigating. So spring semester can be kind of focused on making sure that we build the structures that need to be in place to have faculty feel confident about the areas that we'll do the assessments in. So that piece will come next. And we're appreciative of people being kind of thoughtful and open-minded about how to move forward with it. So thank you.
Pam.
So of course I have a lot of questions because I have a feeling that our department is going to be very impacted by this. But I guess my most immediate question right now is, if this is in place December 30th, but we're not sort of working out the details and potentially haven't worked those out until, I don't know, March, what do we do with the requests and things like that that come in from January to March?
Paloma? So a couple of things. So our thought is that this might actually impact CTE programs a little bit more. So I obviously am not the expert and will absolutely defer to you. But we would have to work with students on a case-by-case basis. We have to have a process in place, whether or not the process is perfect on January 1st. And so we would have to work with students on a case-by-case basis if they are to bring this request forward. I think it would be safe to say, sort of safe to say, that this will not be heavily publicized. And so it might not be as easy as we're concerned for us. And I hate saying that because I want this to be readily available to students, but we need to make it readily available also when we know that we have a strong process. So it might not be as readily available to students on January 1st as we might be concerned.
So it's been a long time since I was department chair, but when I was, it was very, very common for students to ask if they could take some test to show they already know a subject and get credit for that subject. Maybe that doesn't happen anymore, but it happened all the time when I was chair. And I'm worried about the potential workload that could be for people.
That makes sense. So credit by exam is actually a policy that we have had for a long time. And this AP and BP was actually this is the credit by exam policy that we just expanded on. And so a lot of the vocabulary that you'll see in this BP and AP is based on that credit by exam policy that we have actually always had. So what you're probably referring to, Pam, is the credit by examination process, which I can imagine would be more applicable in math. But that is not a policy that we have actually gotten rid of. It's actually a policy that we have had.
So in the past, we were allowed to decide whether or not we would do that.
So I'm not going to comment on that piece.
Okay.
What this is saying is that as an institution, we have to do all of these things. And so we have to do AP, we have to do IB, we have to do CLEP, we have to do the joint service transcripts, which is military. We have to do the complete list of things that Ray alluded to. We don't necessarily have to do them in every department. However, the flip side is that in the student's best interest?
Totally agree, but you also have to think about how is the workload going to be compensated for the people who would have to create and grade and all of those things for those requests.
Well, that sounds like a union consideration, not necessarily a Senate consideration. Ruth.
On the document, everything in green is the new material, right? In the AP?
Yes.
Okay, the part about APs having to be 3, 4, or 5s, is that coming down from the chancellor? Are they dictating saying it must be a 3? Because that was not the case before.
Yes, it was. So we
No,
used
it
that
wasn't.
language.
It
We
wasn't,
used-
because I was asked in economics to evaluate what we would accept.
So as Paloma mentioned about the credit by examination, we just reused our AP language. So I don't know if there was a breakdown in what you're talking about, but I mean, Paloma, am I misremembering? We just copied our language, so it's nothing new.
What's in there for AP is also the same as the policy we've had before. And I need to confirm, but according to AP policy, I believe passing scores are 3, 4s, and 5. AP doesn't, 1 and a 2 is not considering a passing grade on the AP exam. For use.
There's a list floating out there. I don't know where it is. I'd have to search for it on which majors or which disciplines accept which numbers. And
So
I know for a fact that some of them are 4 or 5.
Yeah, 3, 4, or 5.
Right, but in other words, not 3 is my point. Not accepting
So,
3s.
It's very specific. So for example, for economics, like some universities would consider a 3 to satisfy a general ed requirement, some UCs, where some UCs would only consider a 3 would not award credit for a major, whereas other UCs would award credit for a major and general education. So on the SBCC catalog, we have an entire chart that shows exactly how we award credit for 3, 4s, and 5s, how they can be applied on a GETSI and the CSUGE. Where it gets more particular is the universities themselves and how they award credit if it's a major prep course, general ed course, or elective course.
Okay, so again, I'm bringing it up because economics is not awarded credit for anyone who comes in with an AP of 3. We would need a 4 or a 5 here to get
So
credit.
that sounds like something that we need to clean up, because that sounds like it's not in line with what was our current policy on that.
So we may not award credit for Econ 101, but we may award competency credit for a social science for 3.
Okay, so again, my point is there may be some courses for which a 3 is currently not being counted.
So, and I think what the AP says is, I think that the AP says to refer to the AP chart where all of that is kind of specifically laid out. So, and in this situation, AP, I'm talking about the policy referring to the advanced placement chart. So 2 different APs, sorry.
Yeah,
right.
AP 4236, right. So as Paloma said, yeah. So we took this language up here that starts with students requesting blah, 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 right, from that. Kathy?
Yes, I've always used the information on the CSUGE and the iGETSI to inform students about AP scores and what can count. I'd like to know where you have information about specific majors and what will count and not count for majors. Is that what you're showing right now?
What Ray's showing right now is SBCC's AP chart, and that shows how we award SBCC GE, how we award equivalency for an SBCC class, and how we would place an AP test on iGETSI or CSUGE. If we're talking about how universities specifically award credit for AP, you actually have to go to each university's website and research their AP policies based on the major and based on admissions information.
But for our major here in econ, does it show there on that chart that we do not use a score of 3 to satisfy the econ requirement?
So if you go to macroeconomics and microeconomics, Ray, so a score of 3 does not satisfy a course requirement, but it does satisfy, like I was saying, competency requirements, and students can earn units.
And that will count towards their iGETSI or CSUGE, correct?
Correct. They need a 4 or 5 to actually satisfy or say they have completed Econ 101 and Econ 102 specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks for clearing that up.
Patricia?
Yeah, so process observation is that we have no choice. we have a deadline by the end of the year. Your 3 faculty representatives on the board policies and administrative procedure committee are going to look at this Friday. And we are going to no doubt move it forward. I just want to make it clear in case the question comes up there, but most particularly for us, that we understand that this is a God, I can't think of the word. This is a 4,000 policy, which means it falls squarely within Academic Senate's purview. And that we need to come back and address all the questions that have been raised here, particularly Pam's. And so there is a huge amount of work still to be done on this, because we know how, all the all the issues that are going to come up. And I'm not quite clear. I know what you said, Paloma, but I just want to be very clear that we can buy ourselves some time to do what it is we need to do. And I heard you say, yes, probably. But the Senate's got to do a lot of work to do on this because we want to do it right. So do we have that time?
I mean, will the Chancellor's office give us an extension on the December 31st deadline?
I know they won't, because I know you guys asked and the answer was no. I guess I'm just kind of piggybacking on what Pam said. You know, suppose the floodgates do open and we do have requests coming in, but we really don't have a good process developed by the departments for taking care of this. I see a tension point here that I want to make sure we at least acknowledge and have a plan for moving forward. I mean, could we go on the record? I mean, I'm sure we can, that, you know, this academic senate really wants to take the spring 2021 semester to sort out exactly how operationally this would be deployed?
Well, that was,
work?
I mean, that's kind of where I preface this conversation, was
Right.
that I am making a commitment to bring this back immediately, starting January and starting this work.
And that'll pass muster. We can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in fact, that's in some ways the way the law was laid out and the push forward. So the legislation came, Palomar College did the initial development work with a mini grant, and then they developed a bunch of tools to help colleges navigate through this. Their faculty did this, and their Senate was heavily involved. The Senate's job in this one is probably support, structure, and setting up some deadlines and follow processes for faculty. Departments are going to have a major role in what this work looks like. And so there will be yes, no questions that departments can ask. There are probably departments more ready to go early. I can imagine Esther Frankel totally ready to work on Oracle certification. So if you come in with Oracle certification, there's probably a class that corresponds to that, because I know Esther's been working to get people certified and be able to pass that Oracle test. So there'll be obvious places where we'll start first. And then we'll get back into places like Spanish fluency and Spanish credit by exam. That'll look like something that Pam mentioned about math, right? There'll be a number of places where students are more likely in general ed to be asking questions about competency by exam, but we'll be looking first at people who have already had a learning experience that can be validated that will get credit for a course. So there's some obvious first steps that'll be a little more logical. And then there'll be some other places that people need to think departmentally, programmatically, and what will serve students. So Senate's job will be to kind of help carry, right? Keep that structure and keep it going in line.
Good.
So,
Okay. So we are at 4:11 p.m. We have a timed presentation with Lindsay and James coming up. Pam has her hand up. I just want to shape our direction. So for this to move back to BPAP with Senate's approval, we would need to move this item first to action and then approve it as an action item. Pam.
I am also I really am, again, putting on an old chair's hat. I think that if this passes December 30th and there will be people enrolling in January and trying to get credit for courses, I really think you may need to give department chairs a head up that if there are some students ready to ask for this, they're going to be asking for it before this semester even starts. And I think it might be worthwhile to let some of those department chairs know how they should handle this.
I think one other thing I'll just add really quickly, Pam, is that there is a deadline to request credit by exam. And it's pretty early in the semester.
I saw that 3 weeks. But they'll ask for it in January before they register. I mean, that's when those things usually happen. So I just think you should give heads up and maybe some direction of some sort about what to do when we don't have a process. So in our department, we have not done credit by exam at all. That's our policy. So
that can continue to be the information that you're providing students until we get this figured out. And it's possible that you continue to not do that. Michelle?
Is that 3 weeks prior to the beginning of a semester to receive a credit by examination?
No, you have 3 weeks into this semester to request to take a credit by examination.
But again,
I believe.
we had that policy. This is replacing that policy.
That's-
That was our policy.
That's not new. Yeah.
That's not new. The other stuff is new. For instance, the accepting military transcripts and giving college credit for that. That's new. International baccalaureate. That's new.
We have the policy on military in the nursing program already. I send it to you guys because we have to.
Right. So this would be more college-wide, right?
Yeah.
So this is now policy for everyone.
Interesting.
So again, in terms of our process, we would, if we're going to move forward with this, we would want to have a motion to move it to action, and then have a motion for approval once it's in action. Or we can discuss it more. And if we want to discuss it more, I'd say let's come back at 4:45, or excuse me, not 4:45, after Lindsay and James's presentation. That's now at 4:15.
This is Robbie. I move it to action.
Okay.
I second.
Who was the second? I missed that.
Jen, Counselor Jen.
Counselor Jen. Nice. Thank you. So we have a motion to move it to action and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, at this point, I'm hearing none, so I will do a roll call vote. So this is the motion on the table is just to move this item to action. Cornelia.
I abstain.
Counselor Jen.
Yes.
Ellen.
Yes.
Jenny.
Yes.
Patricia.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Devana.
Yes.
Pam.
I just don't know.
You can abstain, Pam.
I'm abstaining.
Okay. Kathy.
Yes.
Robin.
I think I have to abstain too. I don't know how School of Modern Languages would react.
Okay. Jen, I almost called you Jenny again. Oh my God. It might stick, Jen. It might just stick.
It can't.
Okay. It won't stick. Jen.
Yes. And my answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. Robbie.
Yes.
Ruth.
I abstain.
Tara.
Yes.
Russell.
Yes.
Trisha.
Abstain.
And Anna.
Yes.
Okay. Christina, can you give me a count of yeses and abstentions?
We have 14 yeses, 3 abstentions.
Okay, all right. So this item is now in action.
I think we have at least 4 abstentions.
I think I
Myself. Oh, 5 actually. 5.
Okay, so I have Trisha, I have Robin, I have Pam Guenther, and Ruth. I'm sorry, Ruth.
And me.
And Cornelia.
And Cornelia, okay.
And that's 5.
Okay, well that's, yeah, so that's 13 yeses. Right? 13 plus 5 is 18, right?
If everyone's here.
Everyone's here. Okay. That means this item is now in action. So we need 2/3 for this motion to pass. Do I hear, or we don't have a motion, but we need 2/3 for it to pass. Do you have, is anybody making a motion to approve this AP and B, the AP and BP?
I'm working on it.
So can we discuss now? No? We can move
No,
on?
No, we need a motion.
we need a motion.
Okay, I'll try something. To approve, okay, I move, I'm writing this as I go. I move that we approve BP and AP 4235 with the provision that the administrative procedure will return to the Senate in early spring 2021 for further development of operational guidelines. It's the best I could come up with in a hurry.
I'll second.
So we have a motion created by Patricia, Anna seconded. Now is the time for discussion.
Okay, so, I'm raising my virtual hand.
Go ahead, Ruth.
Non-virtually.
It's good.
So I've been looking at these documents. I still don't see where they're requiring us to accept a 3. And I have a problem with that. If you look at our AP 4236, it actually says may count towards credit. So I have a problem with this blanket 3, 4, 5 going, because there's, believe me, in Econ AP, there's a problem with the 3. And so I just want to make sure that that is addressed, that is seen somewhere, and that as long, I need clarification. I need to be able to see that, yes, in fact, this is exactly what's coming down from the chancellor. You must accept a 3. And if that's not the case, then we need to have a discussion on how we're going to proceed with that.
So
EPAP is.
I guess I'm not following, and I guess Paloma, you'll need to explain this to me. I thought we discussed that we just copied. I thought this issue was put to rest. I thought we discussed that we just pulled from our regular AP and that we didn't change anything there.
If you look at the AP you said, AP 4236, it's got a different language. It says 3, 4, or 5s may be, except may count, or I need to go read it.
That's right.
So I think the question, Ruth, is what are we saying accept means? So
No, I think we're saying what?
No, I think because yes, the college accepts a 3 on an econ AP test, micro or macro test, but not to specifically satisfy econ 101 or econ 102.
But so when you say shall receive credit, to me, that sounds like course credit.
Right.
And it says right now, shall receive credit with scores of 3, 4, and 5. So do you not mean that receives course credit?
Well,
I see what your question is. So if we're implementing credit for prior learning, and credit for prior learning is now saying that students will receive SBCC credit, the policy on econ is that they currently only receive credit for a 4 or 5, whereas with the 3, they only receive competency credit. Am I understanding that distinction correctly?
That's right. And to be clear, it's not just econ. There's a bunch of them if you look at the list.
Yeah, there are a bunch of them. I don't have a specific answer for that directly. My understanding is that is not going to change. And that's
okay, but if we approve this and it moves forward, well, I know this isn't the final approval, but if it moves forward like this to BPAP.
But it also should say in the AP, refer to our AP chart. And our AP chart specifically says that we do not give credit for an AP score of 3 on the for Econ 101 or Econ 102.
Would it help, Paloma, if we move that statement up to right after the shall? I mean, it's a simple cut and paste.
I think we say that for I think we say it for AP. I think we have to say it for CLEP, and I think we have to say it for IB because those are standardized assessments.
Hold on. Sorry. I just want everybody. So read what this says. Shall receive credit with scores 3, 4, or 5 under the following circumstances. So there's 2 bullets here, right? And the second one is the student achieved a minimum acceptable score on the AP exam as indicated, just as Paloma just shared with us, on this chart. Right? Does that not clear it up?
Well, then I'm wondering if you just take the 3, 4, 5 out of that sentence.
Yeah, because
No,
then it's a
it's
question of what supersedes what. If the
No,
AP,
it's saying. Go ahead, sorry.
well, if the AP is policy, that should be trumping the chart, right? Because that's our policy. Then that 3, 4, 5, there's an argument to be said, well, you need to change the chart to 3, 4s and 5s.
Can
I don't think that's how you read that. Go ahead, Pamela. And just, we have a motion on the table and it's past our time for the presentation. So I just want to make sure that we're working towards a consensus.
Let me just remind us, the BP is the policy, the AP is the procedure. That's the operationalizing of the policy. And the reference to a chart is inclusive of the AP. It's just that the chart has more detail and it lives outside the procedure. So the procedure says in application of the policy BP, this procedure tells you we may do these things. In order to get more detail, refer to this chart. The chart is part of the policy or the procedure. Ruth, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then I think if this gets to BP, AP, BPAP, I think this concern about the clarity of language is one of the things that committee can take a look at. And I would hope that one of the faculty listening here can help make sure that our understanding is the procedure says you shall have something that helps students navigate this. The procedure shall say, these are the things that we'll do. And then that chart should be the reference point to clarify that complexity that Ruth's pointing out. But charts are part of procedure when they're attached inside.
Patricia?
Yeah, I'm going to be at BPAP on Friday trying to sort this out. And I don't see why we can't accomplish all of this by changing the shall to may. I understand that there's a bullet item that explains this, but I agree that the overarching statement is misleading. And by saying may, it means that based on these two conditions. And if it's based on these two conditions, it's not shall, it's may.
Or we can pull the numbers as Pam suggested.
Anna?
I just want to reiterate that you can get credit that isn't tied to a specific course. So a student can get credit and will get credit if they've earned a 3 on an AP test that may not correlate with a specific SBCC course.
Right.
So they will get credit. They shall get credit for 3, 4,
Right.
or 5. It just may not be for the exact course they think they should get credit for.
Which is how I read it. That my understanding is coincides with Anna's. They shall get.
What course would they get credit for, or are we creating a separate SBCC course?
No,
Competency units. The UCs do it as well. They get credit for taking AP tests at a 3, 4, or 5. And many times they don't specifically correlate with a direct course unless they are higher score.
Yeah, I understand that part of it. It's just that we were being told that the new thing here is that students get SBCC credit
Yes.
now versus.
They'll get 3 units.
So it'll just be
General
3
degree
units.
applicable units in this
Okay.
area.
Okay.
But that's not new. They
Yes,
received those
exactly.
before. That is not new. They got it before. That's why that chart was there.
And that's all spelled out on the AP chart.
Okay.
Cornelia?
So I understand what Anna said, but what if they have a 3 on a course which specifically has a correspondent in our course, in our program composition, right?
Cornelia, we have that, and you saw it in the chart. So there was 4 lines. If we keep using econ as the example, there was 4 lines. So there was 1 line where it said, if you got a 3, here's what you get credit for. 4 and 5, you get credit for the course, right? So again, that's already established within our norms.
I understand, but I believe with this sentence and the shall in the policy above that, I'm not sure if this does not override a chart which is only attached. So I think we should rewrite that.
I'm just gonna add that the AP test is a standardized test. And so we may need to check ed code about whether or not we can say may for a 3, 4, or 5 versus shall. Because across the board, 3 is a passing grade for the AP test. So I think that that's an area that we need to confirm before we change the language from shall to may.
And I think we need to not conflate the fact that a student will get credit or units for the AP test as getting credit or units for a specific course. They're
Yes,
separate.
Anna, thank you, because I looked at that chart and I understand better that they get units towards their degree.
Correct.
But it's not necessary, like it'll say none, it's not equivalent to a course, but they do get 3 units or 4 units towards their SVCC degree.
Exactly. So if
So
you have an
I
econ
appreciate-
major who got a 3 on the test, they'll get 3 degree applicable units toward that, and they will still have to take Econ 101 and or 102 on top of that, even though they took the AP test for econ.
And got a 3.
And got a 3.
And then if they got a 4, could that count for the course?
That depends on the AP chart, but yes.
It does.
For econ, yes.
So we have a motion on the table. This is in action to approve the AP and BP and to make a commitment to bring this back early in January of 2020. We can do a couple of things here. We can continue to discuss, or we can vote on the matter. I'm ready to vote on the matter. Can I call that? Okay. So roll call voting. Cornelia.
Abstain.
Counselor Jen.
Yes.
Ellen.
Yes.
Jenny.
Yes.
Patricia.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Devana.
Yes.
Pam.
I'm abstaining.
Kathy.
Yes.
Robin.
Abstain.
Jen.
Yes.
Robbie.
Yes.
Ruth.
Yes.
Tara. Ruth's at the meeting. Tara.
Yes.
Russell.
Yes.
Trisha.
Yes.
And Anna.
Yes.
Okay, great. So with that, the motion passes. Great. Thank you so much, everyone.
Ray, can I ask
Tricia?
for a clarification before we table this? And I'm understanding that the concerns that have been raised for now have been addressed so that the BPAP faculty representatives can vote in support of this language as is? Or do we have to rewrite it?
I understood it as is, and we can clean some of this up in the spring, especially because Paloma mentioned the ed code language, right? So.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
I understood it as is, and then we'll come back in January and we'll just, mutilate this thing. We'll just just go to town and
We'll
just
clarify it.
I might be absent.
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
So we now have a presentation provided to us by Lindsay Moss and James Savas. And for those of you that haven't heard, James is leaving us. So this will be his last presentation before the Senate. And I just want to say before he gets started how much I appreciate, and I think I can speak on behalf of many of you and say the rest that Pam's given 2 thumbs up, how much we appreciate James, you're working with us. You were awesome this summer. You totally taught us so much about so much of these processes, and we just really appreciate it. And like I said before, I'm just going to continue sending you meeting invites and hope that you just accidentally show up so that we can get your knowledge and see you again. So with that, I'll turn it over to James and Lindsay, and I'm sure you guys want to share your screen, so I'll give you permission to do so, and go ahead.
And I'm going to let James talk because I've been under the weather, and it's his last meeting, so he's got to present one more time.
I tried to pawn it off. She said no. So
I think you're
all
ready
right,
to share, James.
it looks like I am. Okay. All right. So if you remember, back in September, we had projections that went along with our budget. We talked about them in our budget presentations as well as the budget forum, looking at a number of years out. So this is looking at this current fiscal year, which is 2021, and the next 2 fiscal years. What we've tried to do is update this with the idea that enrollment is not looking as we were hoping it would. Typically with a recession, we would expect to see a significant increase in demand for students taking courses. That doesn't seem to be the case at this point. Now, obviously, as with everything right now, that can completely change tomorrow. But at least through now, that seems to be the case. So we wanted to update our revenue projections around that. Also, the other major changes we've really looked at is updating some of the information based on the SERP savings analysis that we've done. So what I'll do is, if you look at the green bars are basically our projections as they were in September, at the end of September. The gray is what's changed in between, and the blue is basically our updated projection. And then each fiscal year is kind of in its own little box, so you can kind of look at each year individually. So up at the top, if you remember, so we're going to go back to what we talked about when I presented. I think that was in August, which feels like 2 years ago at this point. But when I presented, remember I talked about the total computational revenue, or TCR. So just a quick refresher, our total computational revenue is what we get from the funding formula. Then that gets made up of a combination of our local property taxes, local resident enrollment fees, our Education Protection Act funds that come in from the state, and then the difference gets made up out of our apportionment revenue. But between that mix, we get an amount that's calculated in the funding formula. So in 1920, or in 2021, our funding is protected to be based on FTES from our 1920 P1 FTES. So that was our projections our FTES projections in January of 2020. So our ending FTES in 1920 actually ended up significantly better than that, but we're protected to not fall below our 1920 P1. So that's why we have that number in there, and that really hasn't changed. We will end the year below that, so that protection will help us for 1920. Now the problem is that those protections don't exist when we get into 21-22. So if we decline this year, then we're kind of starting from a lower point. So this version of these projections looks at an 8% decrease going into 21-22, and then 22-23 staying at that level, basically, or actually going up 5% from that. Sorry. Compared to September, in September, like I said, we were really expecting the downturn in the economy to have some additional enrollment coming back to us, where we would be able to recapture the small decline from 1920 P1 to 1920 actual. So that's where that million came in. If we end up declining 8%, it really puts a pretty big hit on us, and we go from an $82.8 million total computational revenue to a $79 million total computational revenue. So that's like a $3.7 million swing. So So that's, keep in mind, this is looking at an 8% decline in 21-22 in our credit resident FTES, or not credit resident, but the mix, the total mix, but it's an 8% in credit resident FTES decline. And then the other thing that we're looking at is we've kept overall our out-of-state and international the same as what we had originally had in the projections. This current year is looking to be a little better than what we had in the budget. It's still down significantly. So while this looks positive, this is still, like, for example, in international, still 56% down. It's just a little bit less down than what we had in the budget. We had a 60% decline in the budget. It's looking like it's going to be a little closer to 56. So we didn't want to increase anything else overall. So that's why you see the increase in 2021. And then that coming back out in 21-22. So those are the real changes in the revenue side of things. On the expenditures, the big changes are around the SERP savings. So this is based on the SERP savings analysis that's been presented at CPC and is based purely on what we've already agreed to at this point in terms of the number of hires and the actual replacements that we've done. So there's no projection in that piece. The other thing we did that was relatively significant is we were assuming we would be growing a little bit next year. Since that's not the case, we backed that out. That would be this $1 million here. We were thinking we would need to add back some of the sections that have decreased in this year. We moved that out over into the next year and just reduced that a little bit because of the fact that this is us declining even more. And then we've added some other reductions in, like, hourly payroll. This change in benefits, that's just changed because now we don't have that extra $1 million coming in. So that's decreased. And then you'll see this bottom line here. This was just a placeholder spot to put in the budget stabilization actions. If you remember our previous projections, down at the bottom section, we had $3.5 million in budget stabilization actions, 1.8 million in 2021, and then another 1.7 in 22-23. So we know that the majority of that, not necessarily all of that, is going to be in the salaries line. So that's why we put that there. However, you know, that's something, none of that has all been figured out yet. We just put that there to show that those are included in these numbers. And then really beyond those changes, nothing else has really changed. You will see as we get to this are the net change in fund balance. So what you'll see here is in the new lines, you're looking at a $4.5 million deficit in next fiscal year in 21-22, and then a $2.3 million deficit in 22-23. So keeping in mind that these are both after we've already included those budget stabilization actions in here. So, and then the other line that's important to always keep an eye on is our ending fund balance, which, remember, is basically our savings account. And that we are supposed to keep somewhere in the neighborhood of around $20 million in ballpark based on our board policy. We're looking at that going down to about 17 million next year, and then 14.9 in the following fiscal year. And again, this is based on this scenario where we are declining an additional 8% next fiscal year. So everything is so uncertain that we did a second version of this with us basically declining in about 10% in 2021 from where we actually ended the year in 1920. And then we just stabilized there in 21-22, and then go up 5% in 22-23. So that's really the only difference between these two different versions. of the projections is just a look at that total computational revenue if we didn't decline any further than where we decline in the current fiscal year. So this is a little bit better version of them in terms of our revenues are better. So that has us only declining 2.7 million, an additional 2.7 million. Like I said, nothing else is different between the two versions. If you come down to the bottom, that gets that net change in fund balance here to be a $3.5 million deficit in 21-22, and then essentially break even in 22-23. So anything within $100,000 on this budget is probably, you can consider that pretty much balanced. So, okay. Lindsay, did I forget anything?
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. I don't think you forgot anything, no. I'm sure everyone will ask us questions now, but I just wanted to clarify on the SERP section where he detailed out what we've included in here in the SERP savings, that it does in fact tie to the SERP savings report that we've been providing to CPC as of the last couple meetings. And just kind of remind everyone what James said, that that's based on our actual hirings right now. It doesn't project out any additional hirings in any of the employee groups. So these numbers right here, if you had the time and the interest, and you could, excuse me, tie them right back to that SERP savings report. So it helped a little bit because it is a little bit higher SERP savings than our last projections. You see about $390,000 there in 21-22, but it definitely is not a windfall enough to get us into a stable budget situation. So that's all.
Lindsay mentioned that, we'll probably ask questions, and we will, so I'll open that up now. Anyone have questions? Ruth?
I may have missed this if Pamela reported on it earlier. Do you have an update on where we are with spring enrollment?
I do. Do you want me to go ahead and do that now?
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay, our credit enrollment is down today about 18% this day over last year at this date. We've seen some improvement since last week when we did similar comparison, when we were about 25 and 23% down. So we're moving towards something a little better, but it's a significant dip. The projections that Z and I worked with James on have us probably hitting about 10% down for spring 21 over spring 20. We're hoping that doesn't wind up being the case, but it's possible. The ramifications of the pandemic have really destabilized our local student population. And then the numbers on our national out of state and our international students are about 50% down. Ruth, does that?
Thanks. Yes.
Okay.
Other questions? I'm not hearing or seeing any at this time. So James and Lindsay, thanks so much for bringing this in. Oh, never mind. Pam?
I'm just trying to understand what this is saying. Are we still, so the last, and I'm not following the SERP conversation there, and hold on, my Zoom view did something funky and I can't see the numbers anymore. There we go. The last update that I had heard is that we had saved somewhere in the ballpark of 2 million more than we had expected, but now you're saying it's only 390,000. And I actually I don't understand it in this chart because I don't see where that. If somebody can show me where I'm looking for that. I see the CERP savings there. Where are you
Yeah,
saying
so,
it's only
it's
three?
these two lines. So a good portion of it is already included in the 2021 budget.
Mm-hmm.
So we
So it's the
already had
next, it's the
included,
next year that you're saying there's, I see.
the next year is a little better than what we had originally put in. That's where that 300 and that extra 390,000 is in next year. It's a little better than what we had originally built into the projection.
But this projection that you're showing right now is assuming we stay the same in number of students. The previous one was 8% decrease, and we're currently at an 18% decrease. Am I understanding this correctly?
Okay, so this is the lack of a better term, worse version, the 8% down version, is assuming we go down 10% in spring of 21. So the term that's coming up right now.
And we're already below that right now.
We're below that, but that's been improving. So
okay,
that's what it's based on, is us going down 10% in that term, and then an additional 8% in the next year.
in the following year.
In the following fiscal year.
Okay.
So the spring number lands at 10, and then we continue to decline in the following fiscal year, 8%. The other version, the 0% decline, is we go down 10% in the spring.
Okay.
And then we stay there, and then we start to, for 1 year, and then we start to crawl out by increasing that by 5% the next fiscal year.
Okay.
Does that make a little more sense?
To me, yeah. Thank you.
Other questions before we wrap this up?
I just, oh,
Go ahead.
I just want to say that there's plenty of reason to be conservative here, because it could go either way. This isn't really something we can model, right? These are times we haven't lived through. And it could be the case that, you know, the economy picks back up and people decide to go to work and only go to work, or that they decide to maybe go to work and also pick up classes, but because they put off classes this particular year. So because of the degree of uncertainty, I think there's reason to be this cautious. Although I think that this particular thing we're looking at now might be a little too optimistic, the 0% one for the next year.
Yeah, it's very difficult trying to put anything together. Pamela, Z, and I spent a couple hours trying to work through what made the most sense, and that's where we kind of landed on, well, let's look at a couple different versions, knowing it will probably land somewhere in between, something along these lines. But it's really difficult right now because nothing is following what we would necessarily see based on history.
And then with all that said, I'm just going to add, though, that however, if we look at the CERP savings, most of, you know, that was a significant amount, and that's faculty essentially.
Any more concluding questions or remarks for James or Lindsay? Okay, if not, thank you again, James and Lindsay. If everybody wants to unmute themselves and wish James well on his non-journey, because he's actually not moving from his home, I would assume. He's just zooming in another place. But we've always always really appreciated you, like I mentioned before, James. So thanks for being with us this one last time.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Bye, James.
Congratulations.
Good luck with everything.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, so that brings us back to our agenda. So we have 2 items left to discuss. We kind of tabled the credit part-time faculty Senate committee participation survey. discussion. And then we also have item 8.4, which is the Brown Act Committee and Senate Subcommittee compliance. Let me frame, as we revisit item 8.3, let me frame the next item in the same, in a similar context, so that we know how we might want to proceed with these two items together. There's been discussions happening at the CPC level to make CPC committee and other committees on campus kind of a Brown Act. I'm cracking up, you guys. Okay, to make these like Brown Act committees light, or Brown Act light committees, meaning that take the best parts of the Brown Act that make things transparent and places for participation, and kind of not include all of the other legal parts. So right now our subcommittees are subject to the Brown Act because our bylaws specify the dates and the times that they meet. If we were to update our bylaws, our Senate subcommittees would no longer be subject to the Brown Act in all its glory, meaning, you know, you guys know details of the Brown Act, but all of the parts of the Brown Act. And instead, what we could do is take those items out of our bylaws and then commit to the CPC model and the other campus committee model of being a Brown Act light committee. So what I mentioned before about the part-timers is, if we're going to make with your all contribution and consideration and consensus, if we were going to update our bylaws so that our Senate subcommittees weren't subject to the Brown Act, we could also take that time and include part-time credit faculty as representative of divisions in different places. And we could, and I or whomever can do that work over the winter break, and then bring it back for Senate consideration this spring. So that's how I'm thinking about those two items. So now that you know that, I'll open this back up for discussion. Anyone?
I think it's a great idea.
Robin?
Yeah, I would just also say that I think it's a really good idea to do. It just gives us more leeway and removes the onus of all of the reporting and the 72 hours and all of that kind of thing with the Brown Act.
Well, we would still probably commit to getting the agendas out in 7. I know you want chocolate milk. I'll get it in just a second. And
I would like chocolate milk too.
Chocolate milk for everyone. So yeah, we would probably still want that one. That's one of the ones from CPC, right? This commitment to get the agenda out early so people could review, but maybe not the stuff where it's like, well, if you update your agenda, you have to create like a special meeting and it has to have a special agenda and things like that.
Exactly.
Other comments? You like these ideas? You hate these ideas?
I also like them too, just because if there are situations where a committee needs to change its meeting time, it doesn't have to change the bylaw to do so.
Yeah, exactly. Ellen and then Ruth.
I'm wondering, it sounds good to me, but I also want to make sure I'm not missing arguments on the other side. So I'm wondering what the arguments would be against doing this.
Well, I think one argument against doing this would be that, you know, that there's not the teeth of the Brown Act to have our committees comply with such things. However, I would argue that right now our Senate committees, not all of them even comply with the Brown Act because they didn't get the training and it's been all over the place. But with the teeth of the Brown Act, I mean, what does that actually mean? I mean, nobody's getting arrested for the Brown Act, right? I mean, you correct what your goof up with the Brown Act, right? So I don't even know if there is much teeth there. Other than that, I can't think of anything because I'm the one that wants this. So I don't think I'm playing a very good devil's advocate here.
Ray, would it
But
be helpful if I showed on my screen what those provisions that we're looking at CPC are? I've got them ready to show. It might be helpful if people can see what Brown Act Light would look like. We're running out of time, I'm aware, but I can do that if you want.
I was
Well,
just
I
going to
haven't-
say, in the meantime, can I move to extend the meeting by 15 minutes so we can cover this? Or can we do it in 2 or 1?
There's a motion. So you just made a motion. Is there a
I just
second?
made a motion. I move to extend the meeting by 15 minutes.
I'll second it.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. All right, roll call. Levy.
Well, you can get your stuff together, Pamela. I mean, Patricia.
Okay, I'm ready.
Oh, there we are. Okay.
All right, Cornelia. So the motion on the table is to extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Cornelia?
Yes.
Counselor Jen?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Jenny?
Yes.
Patricia?
Yeah, yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Devana?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Kathy?
No.
Robin?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Ruth?
Yes.
Tara?
Yes.
Russell?
Oh,
I think that was a no. Was that a no, Russell?
yes, that was a no.
Okay, phew. Trisha
No.
and Anna.
Yes.
Okay, so the meeting will be extended by 15 minutes. Okay, Patricia, I believe you have screen sharing privileges now.
Okay, let me get this out of the way. Share screen. Okay, guys, which I'm actually, the fastest thing I could pull up is an email that goes to Pomina, which talks about the agenda item that we're going to send to CPC. So can everybody see what is a email saying CPC agenda item? Can you all see this? Okay,
Yes.
if you take a look at what's in blue, this is what we're considering Brown Act Light. And I just want to say, if you guys would like, I can walk through all of the provisions of the Brown Act, which is I'm a great fan of, but some of them are really setting the bar very high. The one I think everybody has the most issues with is that if you're a member of a committee and a Brown Act committee and you're participating in a non-place, literally make your location open to the public. So, I mean, there's just a lot of, it's a really high bar. So this is what we are looking at approving, I hope, this next week at CPC. So meeting agendas and minutes would be published on the college's committee webpage. We could substitute the Senate webpage for that. Meeting agendas will be posted 72 hours before the meeting. If an agenda is modified after being posted, committee members will be notified and the modification highlighted. This is a lot easier than what the Brown Act requires. Our meetings would be open to college employees, and every committee would have an opportunity for public comment to be provided. Actually, I got to change that because Robbie made a suggestion. I got to change that language. Guidelines for public comments will adhere to those specified in the Brown Act, namely that the committee can set its own guidelines in terms of how much total time and individual time. So that's one of the, this could be something that the Senate decide it wants to use for its subcommittees, which I think would still be very inclusive. I think it goes a long way toward transparency, but I think it makes it honestly quite a lot less onerous for our committee chairs and committee members to follow. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for presenting it that way, Patricia. So let me just refocus our efforts here. So we are talking essentially, we've moved on, I think, to item 8.4, But remember that I said that we would also include 3 as part of this discussion, and we're not making any motions or, you know, voting on anything today. What I'm suggesting is we have these 2 discussion items. I'd like to get a sense of where the Senate is at on these 2 items. Do you love them? You hate them? You know, somewhere in between. And then over the winter break, I can work on bylaws and then bring them back for the Senate's consideration in the spring. And then we could vote on it and wordsmith and talk details. But I just want to get a sense of where people are at. Do we want part-time divisions? Do we want part-time faculty to be able to represent divisions at our subcommittees and other campus committees? And or do we want to remove the times and meeting places in our bylaws so that they're not subject to the Brown Act anymore? Ruth?
Yeah, so I'm definitely in support of it. And then earlier you mentioned about, you know, it being, you know, Brown Act light and it not having as much teeth. Well, these committees don't either, right? These aren't policy setting committees. That happens here, right? So that's another argument to have this move along and be approved at some point.
That is true, but they do advise us, right? So we would want them to have some transparent.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yes.
You know, right.
And I think that's what we'd be imposing, right? It'd be like, I love the idea of putting the agendas on our page. That'd be great.
Right. Yeah. Right.
I agree with everything Ruth said, and the answer to the question you asked earlier for me is yes. I think the plan you just laid out is great, and I would support it fully.
Cool. Other discussion points? For the sake of the group? Okay, I'm not seeing any.
Ray, do you want anybody to serve on that ad hoc committee with you? You want to just develop these on your own and bring them back? They're pretty simple.
I was just gonna basically clean it up and bring it back in January. So if other people want to contribute, that's cool. But I was just item. I was an ad hoc committee of 1. Unless that's giving me too much power.
We'll all join if you give us chocolate milk.
Oh. Well, I just used of it, so guess what? That's not me.
So you would be changing the bylaws, the days and times of meetings, and then just adding like a sentence saying that adjunct faculty are allowed to join committees, or what? So when you're putting both of those in there, are you going to add it to every committee, or is it going to be a general statement? Or
actually, I think the statement says that they can't, so I think I'd be taking that out.
Got it.
And then we delineate each committee. I would be the look of that to remove the days and times, so that the days and times aren't expected to be in the bylaws. Just these are our committees. This is their charge. So I don't even know to be adding anything. It would just be removing. And the other thing that I gotta fix is our TLUs are added up correctly.
I feel pretty confident that you can handle that as an ad hoc committee of 1.
Excellent. Cool. I don't know that I can find time on my schedule for the whole committee to meet together though and focus on this. That's going to be the kicker. So I think we got to all of our agenda items. I think we revisited what we needed to. Was there anything else that we needed to discuss around the credit part-time faculty inclusion on committees? I didn't think there was. I just want to make sure. And I again want to thank Anna for reaching out, and I want to thank all the part-timers that contributed their voice to that, because I think that's an important thing to do. At this point, I'll entertain a motion for us to get out of here so that we can all chocolate milk with our family.
I'll move to do that.
I second it.
Can I hear a heck yes from the, Uh-oh.
Yes.
Patricia's-
Heck yes.
No, no, that was a yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, you looked worried. I was like, oh,
No, no,
Patricia.
no.
All
Thumbs
right.
up, yes.
Happy break, everyone. Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Ren. Bye, everybody.